Well, this is awkward, ain't it? It's been 4 straight losses for Man City. Yep, that's right. 4 games without any positive results for them in all competitions. This is the first time this has happened for Pep Guardiola in his entire managerial career. Makes it all a bit more suspicious when you remember it's been exactly 4 games since a certain man sticking to the plan has been sacked. Maybe he did stick to the plan after all, eh? But in all seriousness, I do think they're going to bounce back.
You bounce back. Yeah, and bounce back immediately. Bounce back. You can bounce back.
People bounce back.
Oh shit, it might really be him. Damn. But
We cannot replace him. We cannot.
But for real, it's unlikely for City to completely fall off their tracks, especially so early on in the season. They have been undefeated in all competitions before this string of defeats, and who knows, maybe the fear of all the 115 charges is finally getting to them, eh? Or maybe it's Kyle Walker's wife putting some juju on them for all the times he's betrayed us.
That I am human, and I do make mistakes. I'm here on my own.
Oh, this guy's a scumbag. But all in all, I'm sure it's making Pep wanting to pull all his hair out right now. Never mind. Moving swiftly on. So what is causing this seemingly undefeatable team be so shit? Now I know I'm a bit late on the City bashing and mocking train, but I was a bit overwhelmed with deciding whether to talk about City or Madrid overcooking, or finally making a video about Amorim joining United, who, by the way, absolutely kicked Pep's bald ass in a thrilling 4-1 victory for Sporting, making it his last European game in charge of Sporting and for the season before he goes to the Europa League hellhole known as Manchester United. I truly don't understand his decision, honestly. For which I wrote down 2 separate scripts, but then my overwhelming laziness kicked in and made sure I was late to the party for sure. So here we are. But don't worry guys, I definitely didn't waste this time binge watching all seasons of Prison Break, because I would never do that. Oh no. Anyways, let's be honest. City are not in a disastrous position with the infinite number of problems like many of their rivals. However, there are some problems which should be addressed. And if you ask me, the first and logical place to start that I can see before we straight and dive into the stats is the possibility that Pep, true to his nature, has been overthinking and overcooking his tactics, creating problems for himself, because no one else was coming close to doing it for him. So he had to do it by himself. No, seriously, this man has a history of overthinking and changing things up at crucial times just for the sake of doing it. I think this man is obsessed, just simply obsessed with being labeled a tactical genius. So much so that he will pull up the most random tactics in the biggest stage, including the Champions League final. No, seriously, this is so well recorded, there are a slew of videos and articles talking about this, including this one by The Athletic, where they put them out in a rather very long list, right here. Seems like this has been an issue throughout Pep's entire managerial career. And I know a lot of this can be attributed to sensationalism in sports journalism to make things seem worse than they are, for the sake of selling more content. But there is some truth to this theory, I think. And I only bring this up because some of the lineups and systems he chooses to play don't make any sense to me at all, given the players he still has in his disposal. Like this lineup against Brighton. Now I know they don't necessarily play in that formation on the field, but brother, what is this lineup and formation? Seriously, who are you?
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?
And speaking of tactics and team selection, with new players being introduced into the team due to injury crisis that City are suffering this season, notably the lack of the totally deserving and legit Ballon d'Or winner Rodri, who can be seen here accepting his award in crutches. I don't think I've ever seen a player accepting the Ballon d'Or while being physically broken like this. But he clearly is a big miss for City, because since his injury, it has been a real step down, at least by their standards. This despite the fact that they still have Gundogan and Kovacic to cover in that position, along with a random array of youngsters who have also pitched in while they face this injury crisis. The injury list also includes City's official party ambassador, Jack Grealish, and a promising youngster and winger in Oscar Bob. And along with this, Ruben Dias, John Stones,
Wagwan Generals,
Akanji, Foden, Doku, and Ake were at some point in time added to the substantial injury list, some of whom are expected to be available shortly. By no means is this a small list, but you should still expect Man City to pull through with all the resources that they have in hand. Come on now, if Oli could go on an 11-game unbeaten run and architect a comeback against PSG with a ragtag bunch of second choice and academy players, surely the best manager in the world should be able to adapt and win against teams which are significantly weaker than his team, at least on paper. Right? Pep's success is not at all tied to the unlimited Abu Dhabi state oil money, as we know, and it's just his brilliant tactics, and not at all buying the best players, chopping and changing if he has to, until he finds the right balance of players for however much they cost. Surely, right? Can't be that. Now let's do a quick wrap up of the results and of their losing streak. Firstly, Tottenham 2, City 1. The perpetual Pep traumatizers, who he has a rather poor record against compared to his usual standards as a City boss. With 8 losses against Spurs in the league, with only 3 wins and 5 losses when playing away at the Tottenham Stadium, it's clear to see that this is the bogey team for City, and they always have a tough time scoring and winning against them. In fact, there's probably only one man who can bitch slap Pep harder. Yep, you guessed it, it's old PE teacher himself, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who in his 8 games against City has managed to win 4 times and draw once against Pep. A slight edge, but it still means Ole's supremacy over Pep. Every little counts here, my friends. Anyways, enough glazing now. Back to the game. Despite dominating in almost every conceivable stat and metrics, apart from the ones that really count, City were unable to break down Spurs and come off as 2-1 losers in the end, with Werner scoring within the 5th minute. Yep, bin the whole club, man. If the Bundesliga stat padding merchant scores against you so early on in the match as well, what are you even doing? Letting a dude who scored 3 goals in his entire 27-game career at Spurs, with only 1 goal this season, which was this one, by the way, that he scored against you. 1 goal in 13 games this season as a striker and attacking winger, and it's against you. I'm sure this is just Ten Hag in disguise at this point, because honestly, just for that, you deserve to lose. The Spurs game was also an indicator of things to come, as City's defensive line was in shambles the entire time, specifically the right-hand side, which will be a key theme throughout this entire losing streak for them. And this was a game they still had their main starting defensive line in Jones, Diaz, and Ake still present, so this wasn't a weak starting defense by any means. Another away game and another loss for Pep and his boys. But this time, it's game week 10 in the Premier League. And this time, it's against the Cherries, who should have been a strong underdog against Pep. And yet, they failed and won it with yet another early goal, this time from Semenyo in the 9th minute. And again, it's the same story with City, dominating most of the stats apart from the ones that truly matter. The Cherries had more shots on goal, more big chances created, and of course a higher XG of 2.04 compared to City's 1.56. Well, I guess for all the XG nerds out there, you can sleep well knowing XG got this right this time. Spot on. This win for the Cherries is much more significant when you consider before the start of this game, City had not lost to Bournemouth in their last 15 encounters, winning each of them and had scored 12 goals in the previous 5 games alone. This match also allowed Haaland to unleash his inner La Caca in full flight.
La caca!
While Phil Foden showing us all why he should have definitely been dropped in favor of Cole Palmer in the Euros. I'm sure Pep has no regrets at all selling Palmer now.
What?
It is also key to note, in this match, barring the absence of Rodri and De Bruyne being on the bench, City were pretty much a full-strength team. Yes, Diaz and Stone were unavailable to start, but Akanji and former Bournemouth boy Ake ain't exactly dumpster finds, are they? With both being first choice at various points in their City careers, and City also being champion the previous season, with De Bruyne being injured for a chunk of the game, means they are able to function at full force without him being present. So I guess the only miss here would be Rodri, which did show as there were many defensive frailties in the game from City, specifically in the midfield. And so I don't think for this match Pep can play the injury card, because look at the players he still had on the pitch and the bench. There wasn't much excuse for City in my opinion, but yet again we see the right hand side was the weak point, as we can see from the first goal with Foden letting his man go and not closing him down, and afterwards, right on the start of the second half, Bournemouth attacked City on the right hand side straight from kickoff. And guess where the attack for the second goal started? I'll let you have a go. Bournemouth looked threatening every time they went on the attack, and City's defense honestly looked to crumble every single time. They were honestly worse than Lindelof and Maguire under Rangnick. If anything, Bournemouth should have at least scored a third, with Tavernier hitting the post after selling Guardiola a dream. Who, by the way, was a scorer of City's goal coming in clutch again, but still wasn't enough to overthrow Bournemouth's lead as they went on to beat the Citizens 2-1, which would be City's first Premier League defeat in 2024. We must mention that this game also saw the return of the pace merchant and serial philanderer Kyle Walker, who kept his record of being defensively unaware and out of position. Sporting 4, City 1. Can I count this as a derby win against City with Amorim being the manager of United now? No? Okay, fine. This would be another away defeat for City. 3 in a row. But this time it's in the Champions League. The new league format Champions League, I must say. Yep, Pep is really covering all the competition in his immaculate defeat run. Yet again, City dominated possession and even got a very early goal through Foden in the 4th minute, with a rather comical lapse in judgment from the Sporting midfield and backline, who let Foden pick the ball right off Morita and slot it in home to give City the lead. But who cares? Every single chance Sporting got, they made sure to punish City. 9 shots, 6 on target, with 4 resulting in goal, with of course 2 penalties from Gyökeres, who managed to score a UCL hat-trick in Amorim's last Champions League game, for a while at least. Speaking of Gyökeres, this brother is the hot new striker on the block, with the hardest TikTok edits currently going around. Even his own club has gotten in on the action. Yes, the footage you're seeing right now, this one, was actually filmed and published by Sporting themselves. Not some fan edit, not some commercial shoot. This was Sporting. The hype is real with this one. And he really showed up Haaland, who continued doing his best impression of Lukaku. And yes, I said Lukaku, mind you, and not Lukaku, because Lukaku is an elite striker, whereas Lukaku is his bumbling alter ego with Tim's Verboot and the first touch of a blind donkey. Gyökeres, by the way, has 23 goals in 18 appearances this season alone, with a staggering total of 66 goals in 68 games for his entire Sporting career. Did anyone think this man was going to turn into an elite goal-scoring machine in the biggest stage in Europe while he was at Brighton, being loaned out to lower league teams like Swansea and Coventry? What a difference a few years can make. And at 26 years old, he's surely at or very near his prime, which I'm sure will entice a certain new United manager to splurge big to enlist his services. Of course, in this match, City's defense was significantly weaker, with Simpson's pussyman starting at centre back, alongside Rico Lewis, who despite having accumulated 67 appearances as of recording this video, is still only 19 years old. So a rather young right side of defense. I think you can see where this is going. Another continuing theme of a weak right side for City. But still, the rest of the team were pretty close to full strength, barring the exceptions of Rodri and KDB, who came on in the 85th minute, by the way, I assume to get some much needed minutes under his belt, as by then they were already 4-1 down. A special player, but I don't think he's special enough to overcome a 3-goal deficit in 5 minutes plus stoppage time. You'd need a truly special kind of player to pull something like that off. At the end of the day, this would be Amorim's parting gift to Sporting fans, and a last chance for the fans and the players to show their appreciation for him, being his last European game in charge of the Portuguese champions before he gets relegated straight to the Europa League hell with Manchester United. Who needs Gyökeres when you can have Xerxes and Højlund, am I right? Speaking of Victor Gyökeres, it's now time for City to face his former team, the mighty Brighton and Hove Albion. Yet again, it's another away game for City, and you guessed it, another away defeat. And yet again, City, like usual, dominated most of the stats, but was a little bit closer this time around, with 60% possession and 15 shots compared to Brighton's 10, of which 6 of them were on target compared to the 4 by Brighton. It was on paper at least more competitive. In some ways at least. I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to look for some silver linings for them. Before the game even started, I was a bit confused because this was the starting lineup and formation that was given for City. Does anyone understand this formation? Now I know in practice during play it's more like a 4-3-3, but like what is happening in this graphic? So what? Guardiola, Walker, who's back again in the team, is playing as a 3-man centre back with Pussyman in the middle of them. And Kovacic and Lewis as wingbacks? Or is it Lewis and Savinho? Or is it Nunes as the other wingback? I don't know. Again, I understand in practice this formation doesn't mean anything, but I still found it quite amusing. It's like Pep is panicking after losing 3 games in a row and trying something crazy. That mad bald man. This was a Brighton team who City's current title rivals Liverpool beat twice in a row, only the week prior to this game. But it is key to note, they weren't the biggest defeats for the Seagull, losing each time by a goal. And you can be sure that Brighton, despite losing these matches, put on a fight against Liverpool, which they continued on this game. Like the previous games and teams we have seen so far, Brighton continued to attack down City's right and exploit them. Yes, Haaland did finally score in this game, in the 23rd minute, but in the second half, Brighton would come back and take the lead, with goals from Pedro and O'Reilly in the 78th and 83rd minute respectively, who were both brought on as substitutes early on in the second half, which also saw a change in the formation and style of play from Brighton, with an extra man in midfield. And it should be noted that throughout this period, and most of the second half, Brighton were the team in attack and dominating City on the pitch. In short, these changes caused City to just crumble in this match. Of course, in the post-match press conference, Pep was asked many questions about the 4 defeats in a row. Every single question trying to ask him if he was finally feeling the pressure and facing his toughest period in charge of the club, which of course gave Pep the opportunity to flex his previous records of winning 16 and 17 games in a row to win the league in the previous seasons, and stating there's always a first time for everything. Although he didn't try to seem mad or defeated, you could still tell that this man was super annoyed. He did a lot of waffling to basically say it's his first time and it is what it is. When asked whether his team can get back to the 16-game winning form that he had previously mentioned, this was his reaction.
Are you serious? Right now I have to try to win one. Then we'll see what happens next.
I'm sure Pep and his big, beautiful bald head will bounce back, unlike Erik, with a few of the players looking to return back into action. And if not, the rest of us can finally enjoy seeing him embrace his full bald fraud potential. Cause there's a new bald sheriff in town.
Pep. I don't know, man. You've been seeming sus lately. It's almost like we have an imposter among us. I saw that you wanted... Don't lie to me, Pep. You sussy baka.
Da kan dere slutte å prate så mye, da blir det ikke noe løye. Prat heller om verdenskrise, jeg synes det er mye viktige gutter. Jeg er lyng og alle vet det, jeg er han så du kan se på TV, så til og med bra ut når jeg spiser. Jeg synes det er mye riktigere. Figo,